I never imagined my life would take such a surreal turn. One moment, I was just me. The next, I was standing in front of a mirror, staring at a face that wasn't entirely my own. Soft, delicate features, impossibly smooth skin, and eyes that seemed to gleam with a new kind of vulnerability and allure. I blinked, almost afraid I'd wake up and find it was all a dream. But the reflection didn't change. My heart pounded in my chest as my hands lifted to touch my cheeks, round, impossibly soft, and undeniably feminine. How is this possible? I whispered to my reflection, my voice barely audible. It had changed too, lighter, more melodic, almost musical. Every sound felt foreign, and yet, in some twisted way, it resonated with a part of me I had never explored. My stomach churned with a mixture of fear, fascination, and an overwhelming sense of curiosity. This wasn't just a makeover or a trick of the light. Something fundamental had shifted. I was different. The first wave of panic hit as I tried to remember what had happened. The factory, they called it promised transformation, a complete reconstruction of identity. Boys, they said, could become perfect girls. Elegant, alluring, socially magnetic. I had laughed at the absurdity at first. But curiosity got the better of me. And now, standing in this sterile, softly lit room with mirrors lining every wall, I realized there was no turning back. I reached for the nearest mirror panel and pressed my face closer, scrutinizing every contour. My lips were fuller, my jawline delicate, my eyebrows perfectly arched. Even the texture of my hair was different, silky, flowing in soft waves. I tried to step back, but the mirror seemed to pull me in, hypnotic, almost accusing. Is this me? I murmured. The question echoed through the room, unanswered. Life outside the factory became a minefield. Returning home was surreal. My family, friends, and colleagues didn't immediately notice the subtle changes, but I could feel every stare, every whisper, every accidental brush of a gaze. At work, I fumbled with my new voice, soft and uncertain. My coworkers looked puzzled, trying to place why I seemed different. Are you feeling okay? My best friend asked, squinting at me during lunch. I'm fine, I lied, forcing a smile that felt foreign on my lips. Inside, I was a storm of confusion. How could I explain that I was not entirely me anymore? That my body, my voice, my very essence had been rewritten? Each interaction was a battle. Small tasks felt monumental, typing emails, drinking coffee, even walking past the break room without drawing attention to the subtle grace in my posture. At home, it was worse. My reflection in the bathroom was a constant reminder of the change I couldn't undo. I avoided mirrors when I could, only catching glimpses in windows or polished surfaces. I tried to hide the alterations under baggy clothes and loose hair, but it was no use. The transformation wasn't just skin deep, it was in every fiber of my being. And yet, a spark of curiosity lingered. Every time I caught sight of myself, a tiny, forbidden thrill ran through me. There was a strange, addictive allure in the way my new hands felt delicate when brushing against my hair, or how my hips moved almost instinctively with an unfamiliar sway. I hated it. I feared it. But I couldn't deny it. The real exploration began in secret. Late at night, when the world slept, I would retreat to my room and study my reflection with deliberate attention. I experimented with makeup, gentle strokes of eyeliner that framed my eyes, blush that warmed my cheeks, lipstick that made my lips feel alive in ways I hadn't imagined. Every adjustment brought a rush of excitement, a shiver of anticipation, and a pang of guilt. I started trying on the clothes the factory had provided, soft skirts, silky blouses, dresses that hugged in all the right places. Each garment felt like a revelation, a key unlocking doors I didn't know existed within me. I twirled in front of the mirror, laughing nervously at the sound of my lighter, melodic voice. The fabric brushed against my skin, soft and unfamiliar, yet comforting in a way that made my chest tighten. I whispered to myself, almost ashamed. This feels right. And it did. But the fear never fully went away. Each discovery was a tightrope walk between exhilaration and terror. I practiced walking in heels, feeling the subtle shift in balance, the way my legs elongated and my posture demanded attention. I practiced speaking softly, deliberately, testing the reactions of my reflection as if it were a silent audience. Even my mannerisms changed. I noticed the subtle ways my shoulders rounded, the delicate tilt of my head, the nuanced gestures of my fingers. Every movement felt like an audition, a performance I couldn't stop giving. And yet, the performance slowly began to feel like reality. Weekends became my playground of experimentation. I ventured out, tentatively, in public spaces, cafes, parks, small shops, testing the waters of social interaction in my new persona. The first time someone smiled at me, really smiled, I froze, heart hammering in my chest. A stranger complimented my hair, and the warmth that spread through me was intoxicating. "Thanks," I said, my voice trembling slightly but carrying a newfound confidence. The thrill of anonymity was liberating. No one knew my past. No one judged me for the transformation. I could be exactly who I wanted, or perhaps, who I was discovering I wanted to be. Each outing emboldened me, each glance or subtle compliment reinforcing the strange, intoxicating identity forming within me. But it wasn't all easy. There were stares that lingered too long, whispered conversations that made me shrink inside, and moments when the fear of exposure clawed at my chest. One evening, I walked past a group of guys laughing loudly on the street. I felt their eyes on me, their judgment palpable, and I froze. My body tensed, my heartbeat spiking, but instead of fleeing, I straightened my back, lifted my chin, and walked past them with a grace I hadn't known I possessed. And something inside me shifted. The fear was still there, but now it was tempered with pride, with the realization that I could exist in this world as this new person, and perhaps, that this new persona was not a cage but a key. Then came the confrontation. It wasn't planned, but it felt inevitable. My boss called me into the office, eyes narrowed in concern. "Are you hiding something?" he asked gently, leaning back in his chair. I froze. For a split second, I considered denying everything, hiding behind my old life. But the reflection of my own confidence, fragile, nascent, yet undeniably real, reminded me that I had a choice. "I'm different," I said finally, voice steady, even melodic. "But I'm still me." The words felt strange yet liberating as they left my lips. My boss blinked, processing, then nodded slowly. "As long as you're comfortable, that's what matters." It was a small victory, but it echoed through me like a drumbeat of affirmation. I realized then that my fear of judgment was only as powerful as I allowed it to be. And more importantly, I understood that this transformation, physical, emotional, and social, was a part of me that deserved to exist, unapologetically. Empowerment became a daily ritual. I no longer hid behind baggy clothes or avoided mirrors. I walked with intention, dressed with care, and embraced the identity that had once terrified me. Friends noticed the change, not just in appearance, but in the subtle radiance of confidence that now emanated from me. "Wow, you look amazing," my best friend said one day, a genuine smile lighting up her face. I smiled back, feeling a swell of pride and relief. "Thanks. I feel amazing too." The factory, once a place of fear and uncertainty, had become the unlikely catalyst for self-discovery. It wasn't just about the outward transformation, it was about uncovering parts of myself I never knew existed. Every brushstroke of makeup, every step in heels, every whisper of my softer voice had been a step toward authenticity. I learned to love the reflection in the mirror, not as a mask, but as a revelation of my truest self. The world had tried to define me in rigid terms, boy, girl, identity confined to expectation, but the experience had shattered those boundaries. I had discovered freedom, beauty, and power in embracing the unexpected. Looking back now, I realized the journey was never about becoming someone else. It was about becoming whole. Each night spent experimenting in front of a mirror, each anxious step into the unknown, each heartbeat of fear and exhilaration had brought me closer to the person I was always meant to be. I'm no longer haunted by the reflection. I revel in it. Every curve, every gesture, every note of my voice tells a story of courage, curiosity, and self-acceptance. I walk into the world now not just as a transformed body, but as a liberated soul, unafraid of judgment, unashamed of desire, and empowered by authenticity. To anyone watching this, anyone who has ever felt constrained by expectations or fearful of embracing who they truly are, know this. The journey may be shocking, confusing, and even terrifying, but the destination is worth every moment. There is a power in self-discovery, a beauty in transformation, and a freedom that comes from stepping into your true identity, unapologetically. The factory taught me that. The mirror showed me that. And now, standing here in the soft glow of the evening light, I know it fully. Being yourself, fully, honestly, and bravely, is the most extraordinary transformation of all. The first time I walked into a crowded cafe fully dressed as myself, well, my new self, I felt every pair of eyes like a spotlight burning into me. My skirt swished around my knees, heels clicking sharply on the tiled floor, and for a moment, I thought I'd collapse from sheer anxiety. Just breathe, I whispered under my breath, gripping the strap of my bag tightly. My reflection in the cafe's polished counter caught me mid-step. My lips, curved naturally, looked soft and inviting. My hair fell just perfectly over my shoulders. And yet, every fiber of my being screamed, what if someone recognizes you? What if they laugh? What if this is a mistake? I ordered a coffee, my voice light and melodic, and felt the barista's gaze linger longer than usual. A twinge of panic shot through me. They know. They must know. I clutched the cup as if it were a shield, forcing my legs to move with calm precision. By the time I found a seat near the window, I realized my pulse had skyrocketed. Yet, strangely, a small thrill ran alongside the terror. This is me. And no one can take it away. As I sipped my latte, I noticed subtle glances from other patrons. Some were curious. Some seemed bemused. But most of all, I felt powerful. Each tiny interaction became a small victory, a compliment I imagined someone was about to give, a lingering look I now held with steady confidence. My reflection in the glass shimmered back at me, soft and confident. The next weekend, I pushed myself further. I visited a boutique I had always admired but never dared enter in my previous life. The dresses there were exquisite, delicate fabrics that seemed almost unreal in their elegance. I ran my hands over a soft silk gown, feeling the chill of the material against my skin. My reflection in the fitting room mirror stopped me mid-motion. The person staring back was both familiar and completely foreign. Who is this? I whispered, twirling slowly. The fabric clung perfectly to curves I didn't remember having, swaying elegantly with each movement. I laughed softly, half disbelief, half delight. The sound of my own melodic voice made me shiver. This was indulgence, and I was intoxicated by it. But then reality snapped back like an ice-cold slap. A group of teenage girls giggled outside the store. My stomach twisted. Are they laughing at me? Do they see me as a joke? My hands clutched the dress tighter, almost as if holding myself together physically. And yet, I couldn't stop. I had to know what it felt like to truly live in this body, in this persona. Slowly, deliberately, I stepped out of the boutique into the sunlight. Every glance, every whisper became a challenge, and I met it head-on, spine straight, chin lifted, heart pounding. That week, I began keeping a small journal, documenting every thought, every subtle reaction of my body, every minor victory. I wrote about the way my voice felt lighter, more musical, and how my movements had become softer, more graceful without conscious effort. I detailed each experiment with makeup, each skirt or dress that made me feel like I was finally me. It was both terrifying and addictive. Writing it down made it real. I was no longer imagining. I was living. Yet, beneath the thrill, a quiet fear lingered. What if someone from my past discovered me? What if my family noticed the subtle shift in posture, the longer hair, the softening of features? One evening, my reflection startled me. My eyes, large and expressive, stared back with a confidence I hadn't known existed. But in the shadow of that same reflection, I saw a flicker of doubt, a ghost of my old self whispering. Who are you really? Are you pretending, or have you become someone else entirely? Then came the social experiment I hadn't anticipated. A friend invited me to a small party, casual but crowded, filled with people I knew, some well, some barely. I hesitated. My heart raced. The thought of exposing myself, even partially, made my stomach knot in fear. But the pull of curiosity, of discovery, was too strong to resist. I arrived, the heels I had practiced for weeks clicking softly as I walked through the door. Eyes turned toward me. Whispers flickered around the room like static electricity. My pulse thumped against my ribs. Do they see me? Do they know? Can I survive this? I felt a tap on my shoulder. You look amazing, a friend said, smiling genuinely. Relief washed over me in a warm tide. The tension eased just enough to allow me to mingle. Each conversation was a test, a delicate dance between disclosure and concealment. But with every laugh, every smile, every approving glance, the new me solidified. By the end of the night, I was exhausted but exhilarated. I had walked through judgment, navigated curiosity, and survived. More than survived, I had thrived. Each moment of fear had been a step toward empowerment. The turning point came unexpectedly. One afternoon, while walking through a busy park, a small child tugged at their parent's sleeve and stared. Their wide eyes were filled with pure curiosity. My heart froze. But then, the child smiled and waved. I waved back. And in that simple gesture, I realized, fear loses its power when you refuse to let it define you. The whispers, the stares, the uncertainty, they were external. My acceptance of myself was internal, unshakable, and liberating. I started experimenting with small public risks. A stroll through a crowded mall, a coffee run during rush hour, even casual conversations with strangers, all became exercises in courage and self-discovery. Each outing reinforced a truth I was slowly beginning to accept. This was not a temporary phase, not a performance. This was a new chapter of my life, and it belonged to me fully. But life has a way of forcing confrontation. One evening, my mother called unexpectedly. I froze as her voice filled the room. I noticed changes, she said softly. My chest tightened. The careful armor I had built seemed ready to shatter. I'm figuring things out, I replied, voice steady but tentative. There was a pause. Then she sighed, a mix of relief and concern. As long as you're happy, that's what matters. Tears welled in my eyes. The acceptance I had feared for weeks, months even, arrived in a quiet, gentle way. It wasn't loud or dramatic, it was real. And for the first time, I felt truly seen, not just by myself, but by someone who mattered deeply. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, softer light spilling across my room. The reflection staring back was not just a woman. It was someone who had walked through fear, who had explored and discovered, who had embraced the unknown and emerged stronger. I smiled, tracing the contours of my face gently. I am me, I whispered. All of me. The next weeks blurred into a routine of exploration, affirmation, and subtle public victories. Friends noticed the glow. Co-workers remarked on the newfound confidence. Strangers offered compliments that were no longer terrifying but exhilarating. My life had shifted in ways I hadn't imagined possible. And yet, in every whispered compliment, every stolen glance, every hesitant touch of makeup, I was reminded of the journey I had taken. The fear, the experimentation, the slow, transformative embrace of my true self. The factory's promise had been literal and figurative. I had entered one version of myself and emerged another. But the transformation wasn't just external, it was a metamorphosis of identity, of courage, of self-acceptance. I had learned that beauty, confidence, and authenticity were not gifts handed to you. They were cultivated, nurtured, and claimed. And as I walked through the streets now, heels clicking softly on the pavement, hair flowing like liquid silk, I felt something I had never known before, unshakable power. Not the kind defined by others, but the kind that comes from knowing, without doubt, that you are exactly who you are meant to be. Every glance, every whisper, every thought that once filled me with anxiety now fueled my confidence. The reflection in the mirror had become my ally, my confidant, my reminder of the journey I had survived and the life I had claimed. And for the first time, I truly believed it. The world could look at me, and I would not flinch. Because I had walked through fear, embraced transformation, and discovered a strength that was entirely my own. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. It wasn't a dramatic reveal or a heated argument. It was subtle, almost mundane, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 fears. I had been invited to a casual dinner with a few colleagues, a small gathering meant to celebrate a recent project. I hesitated when I received the invitation. The thought of being fully visible in public, in front of people who had known me as him, made my stomach knot. But I couldn't say no. The allure of testing the boundaries of my new identity, the thrill of existing fully as myself, was too strong. The evening began innocuously enough. Laughter, casual chatter, clinking glasses. But I could feel the tension beneath the surface, like an unspoken question everyone was tiptoeing around. Then, as I poured wine into my glass, one of my coworkers, someone who had known me for years, paused and looked at me, eyebrows raised. "You look different tonight," she said, her tone careful, measured. I froze. My pulse spiked. The room seemed to shrink around me. Every face blurred into a mix of curiosity, confusion, and silent questioning. My hands trembled slightly as I clutched the glass. Yes, I said, my voice steady but softer than usual. I've changed. I'm not the same as before. The words felt like both a confession and a declaration.
Silence followed.
And then, something unexpected happened. Instead of shock or ridicule, the room shifted. Conversations softened, glances became warmer, and the subtle energy of acceptance began to wrap around me like a comforting blanket. One colleague reached out, lightly touching my hand.
I'm glad you're being yourself, she said.
I exhaled, a laugh bubbling out of me, part relief, part disbelief. The fear that had gripped me for weeks, months even, began to ebb. And yet, beneath the relief, a deeper, more intimate tension lingered. Later that night, as I walked home, the city lights casting long reflections on wet pavement, I felt the full weight of my journey press down on me. Every step in heels was deliberate, precise, almost ritualistic. I thought of the factory, the mirrors, the whispered instructions, the experimental nights alone in my room. And I realized that the transformation wasn't just physical, it was emotional, psychological, spiritual. But with empowerment came vulnerability. There were moments, quiet and terrifying, when I questioned myself.
Who am I really?
Am I pretending, or am I truly, The reflection in every window, every polished surface, seemed to challenge me. And yet, unlike before, I no longer recoiled. I stared back, confronting the person I had become, and felt a strange, thrilling clarity. The real test came the following week. A casual outing with friends, some who had known me from before the transformation, some who hadn't, turned into an unplanned trial of courage. "Why don't you join us for karaoke?" a friend suggested, unaware of the internal storm it would unleash.
My heart leapt.
Public exposure, vulnerability, attention, all in one package. My hands were clammy, my pulse thrumming in my ears. I wanted to decline, to retreat into safety, but a spark inside me, the confidence I had been nurturing, the self-acceptance that had been building, refused to let fear dictate my actions.
I'll
do it, I said, voice trembling slightly but resolute. On stage, the spotlight blazed down. I could see every face, every gaze fixed on me. My legs shook, my breath came in shallow bursts, and yet,
I felt alive.
I sang, my voice melodic, soft, undeniably feminine. The lyrics weren't just words. They were an expression of everything I had endured, every secret night of experimentation, every moment of doubt and discovery.
Applause followed. Cheers erupted.
And for the first time, I didn't feel like the scared, uncertain boy who had entered the factory. I was a woman, confident, radiant, unapologetic. I had claimed my space, my identity, and my voice in a way that demanded recognition, not pity or judgment. The confrontation wasn't always external. There were nights when the mirror became my adversary, reflecting insecurities that no one else could see. I scrutinized every detail, the delicate curve of my jaw, the subtle arch of my eyebrows, the way my clothes hugged my new form. I questioned myself relentlessly. Am I enough? Am I truly, And yet, in those moments of doubt, I began to find power. I touched my reflection gently, tracing my features, acknowledging every change, every deliberate step I had taken to embrace this identity. I whispered affirmations into the silence. You are beautiful.
You are strong.
You are enough. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the reflection softened, the fear melted, and the confidence grew. The final confrontation came in the most unexpected form, my own family. They had noticed, of course, the subtle changes, the softer voice, the delicate gestures. My parents sat me down one evening, their faces a mix of curiosity, concern, and tentative acceptance. I can see the change, my father began carefully. But, are you happy?
The question pierced me.
For weeks, months even, I had measured happiness in fleeting moments, compliments, glances, subtle victories in public spaces. But now, faced with the ultimate mirror, the people who had known me longest, I realized that happiness wasn't a moment. It was a declaration, a choice. Yes, I said, voice firm.
I am.
I've never been more myself in my life. They paused, then nodded. My mother reached out, pulling me into a tight hug.
Then we support you, she whispered.
I cried, not from sadness, but from relief. From liberation. From the profound realization that the journey I had embarked on, terrifying, exhilarating, confusing, intoxicating, had led me here, fully visible, fully accepted, fully empowered. From that point on, life became a delicate balance of exploration, confidence, and authenticity. Public outings became exhilarating exercises in self-expression. Conversations, once terrifying, became opportunities to assert identity and claim space. And every reflection, every glance, every interaction reinforced the truth: I was no longer hiding. I was thriving. The factory, the mirrors, the whispers, the experiments, they had all been part of the journey, but they were not the destination. The real transformation had happened inside me, in the acceptance, the courage, the relentless pursuit of authenticity. And as I walked down the street one evening, heels clicking softly against the pavement, hair flowing in the breeze, I felt a profound, almost intoxicating clarity. I had faced fear, embraced transformation, and emerged not just changed, but truly free. The world could look, judge, whisper, or stare. I no longer flinched, because I had claimed myself, every curve, every gesture, every breath. And in doing so, I had discovered the most powerful transformation of all: the courage to be completely, unapologetically me.